Hi, I'm Shan Wu, and the question of the night is Judge Jeanine going to jeopardize hundreds of criminal cases in the District of Columbia? That's former Judge Jeanine Pirro, the Fox News host, who now has been picked by Donald Trump to be the new interim U.S. Attorney in D.C. So the sunlight apparently shone a little bit too brightly on Trump's pick, Ed Martin, and his nomination has now been derailed, thanks to a lot of reporting, thanks to you folks, as I talked about in my video here. Now, one reason to subscribe to us is for analysis like that and what we're doing tonight, which is to give you some of the behind-the-scenes issues that may happen and how that works with the legal analysis of the news of the day. So please join us, do support us, subscribe. We are growing, and we want to grow with you. All right. So the question is, Trump's gotten rid of Ed Martin because it looked like there's no way he's going to get confirmation, but is he out of the frying pan and into the boiler or water for his next pick? So Jeanine Pirro, as some of you may know, is a very big-time Fox News host. And after all, what better qualifications for a prosecutor than being a popular TV show host? Now, she actually was a prosecutor, unlike Martin. And like Martin, she has absolutely zero ties to Washington, D.C. So kind of a questionable choice to serve the people here, but what the heck? It raises some interesting legal questions, though, because Ed Martin was an interim pick, and now she's going to be an interim pick. She's not yet confirmed. And there is a legal question, as the New York Times has pointed out, as to whether Trump can even do this. To understand this question and how it could affect the legitimacy of any prosecutions brought under her tenure, we have to dive a little bit into the process for how do you replace people, U.S. attorneys in particular, with temporary folks, interim, before you have a pending Senate-confirmed nominee. So the U.S. attorneys are the top prosecutors in their federal jurisdictions. There are 93 of them in the country, and D.C. is one single judicial federal district, and it's a very, very unique one. I mean, for example, all of the January 6th prosecutions for the Capitol riot insurrection were run out of the D.C. office. So let's talk about interims versus actings. So there's actually a specific law that dictates how you take care of appointing an interim U.S. attorney, especially during the transition in a administration. And that's 28 U.S.C. Code 546 about vacancies. So it says that the Attorney General can appoint a U.S. attorney for the district in which the office is vacant. So the Attorney General acting really at the behest of the president, especially in this administration, they make this interim appointment. Now, you cannot appoint somebody who the Senate has refused to give advice and consent, so they can't kind of send Martin back up, or you can't send a failed nominee up. And they can serve until either someone else gets appointed or 120 days. So Martin's clock, as we've discussed, was really running down at this point. And if an appointment expires, meaning it's past 120 days, the district court for that federal judicial district, remember those districts line up, each federal district has district courts and a U.S. attorney, then the court for that district, the district court, can appoint a U.S. attorney to serve until the vacancy is filled. So in D.C., Trump obviously does not want the D.C. District Court headed by Judge Boasberg to make an appointment, because Boasberg's the same judge who's inquiring into whether the Trump administration should be held in criminal contempt at the moment for violating Judge Boasberg's order against sending migrants to a brutal prison in El Salvador. Remember, he said turn the planes around. They didn't. So Trump maybe had some pressure that he needed to pull Martin ahead of the expiration of the 120 days, and he wants to quickly put someone else in there. But what's unclear here is whether or not pulling Martin starts the 120-day clock running again. So Trump may be thinking, okay, I'm going to put in, Judge Jeanine here, and now I have another 120 days. Not so clear that he could actually do that. And if that is the case, he's got two problems here. First, if it turns out there's a challenge to her, and you know who's going to challenge that is going to be all the defense counsel of defendants who are being charged and prosecuted while she is the interim U.S. attorney. They're going to challenge, is this even a legal appointment? Because the 120 days has already run on any interim pick. We don't care if it's Judge Jeanine or if it's Ed Martin or whoever. 120 days ran already, so you got to go to the district court. You can't just keep appointing people. Now, the Times analysis points out that one problem could be if a court were to uphold this, you could just kind of like do this constant running through this process, right? You go to 119 days, switch someone else out, so you never have to get your nominee confirmed. Pros and cons to that, we can talk about that in a second. In a previous Trump administration, Trump 1, Trump ran into this problem, not with the interim appointments, but with the related law, which is the Vacancies Reform Act. So you might recall, it's ancient history now, but several of Trump's appointments there were challenged because they were past their vacancy time. So most notably, I think Ken Cuccinelli, who was leading U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, his tenure was challenged. And actually, a judge found that he was illegally in that position. So we'll put up this old article as a reminder, where the Times reported that apparently holding a job unlawfully is not a reason to be fired in Trump 1. Also, the acting head then of the Bureau of Land Management, which covers millions of acres of federal land, court said he had to be removed from his position because he was in it illegally. He had overstayed the period where he could serve under this Vacancies Act. So that was Cuccinelli and also the land management's person. Now, with the land management person, Trump's people tried an interesting trick. They said, consistent with the law, the Secretary of the Interior will continue to lead the department and all its bureaus with the strong leadership of that land management team, specifically the deputy director, who had basically overstayed his time. So they're trying to basically switch his business card title in order to kind of get around this problem. It was unlawful. Cuccinelli was unlawful. And therefore, the rulings that they made during that time were basically null and void. They had the same problem with an acting Secretary of Homeland Security then, Chad Wolf. A court also found in Trump 1 that he was probably serving illegally at that time, too. Now, in a way, these are technical issues in terms of timing, but they have enormous consequences because, either you're legally in that position or you're not. And so with the Trump situation now in D.C., if he's out of that 120 days interim appointment, then he's into the Vacancies Reform Act. So let's explain what that actually does. So under the Vacancies Reform Act, the president and no one else can designate an acting U.S. attorney, acting, not interim, big difference there. And they can serve in that position so long as they are an official who had served for at least 90 days of the previous year, and that would really put you in the Biden administration, right? And they need to have already been holding a Senate-confirmed position. That's a big difference. So what's really going on here is these two rules are working together. The interim U.S. attorney can only serve for 120 days because they're, interims, And the Federal Vacancies Act says after that, you would really need to have somebody in an acting position. But there are conditions to that, right? They have to, within that year, have been serving in that administration, or they have to be already Senate confirmed. Those are two big restrictions for Trump. Again, this may seem technical, but there's really strong reason for these kinds of rules, right? Because you want stability, and most importantly, you want people who have been confirmed. You want to put these officials who are in very important positions, hold the trust of the people, through the vetting process that the Constitution requires. You want confirmation proceedings, not these sort of constant acting interim positions that can be almost anybody, and there's no real sunlight shown on them because they haven't gone through a confirmation process. All right, so maybe Trump wants to just keep naming Fox TV hosts like Judge Jeanine to the U.S. attorney position. Maybe he wants to name podcasters to them so that he never has to go through the confirmation process for any of them. Kind of seems unlikely that that's his real plan because there is more benefit for them having a person who's confirmed can continue to carry out, however dubious aims they have to carry out, but you've got someone who keeps doing it. What seems more likely is, as usual, he just doesn't care what the law says. He just wants to do it his way. Okay, they're telling me Martin can't get confirmed. I'll appoint Jeanine. She's great on TV, right? And then he leaves it to his lawyers to figure out some argument for doing what he wants to get done. Kind of like the way when he was asked, do you need to uphold the Constitution? What did he say?
Don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know.
So this puts Trump in an unenviable position. He's got to find either someone to be the acting who had served during the Biden administration, obviously he doesn't want that, or he's got to find someone who's already Senate confirmed. Okay, he's only 100 days into his term. Not a whole lot of Senate confirmations have happened, but there certainly is one who is obviously the speediest member of the Trump administration. Let's never keep him out of the picture.
Nothing has frustrated me more than false choices like the one the president laid out tonight. The choice isn't just between big government or big...
Never gets old. I like to paraphrase that as Marco Rubio saying, in a short time I've been in Washington, nothing frustrates me more than the lack of available water. But I digress. Yeah, why not make Rubio Secretary of State, head of USAID, National Security Advisor, and the National Archivist, as well as the U.S. Attorney acting. Last time we were talking about Rubio, I forgot he's also the National Archivist. He already holds so many positions, or as some are calling him, Secretary of Everything. Remember the old saying, Jack of all trades, master of none. But maybe that'd be better than having all the criminal defendants charged during an illegal appointment appeal their cases, because that's what they're going to do. This is a huge office with hundreds of criminal cases going on. The consequences will be massive. Now, as we will see, the judge is going to have probably some problems getting confirmed. She has prosecutorial experience, unlike Ed Martin, but her experience being the district attorney, state district attorney for Westchester County in New York, that's pretty different than being the U.S. attorney in D.C., which has tremendous city problems of crime, plus the usual federal issues, plus the particular issues to Washington, D.C., federal security for the White House, the Capitol. This is the largest U.S. Attorney's office in the country with hundreds of prosecutors and one of only two, the others the U.S. Virgin Islands, where the feds do all of the street crime as well as the purely federal crimes. That's a big part of why I chose it over the Manhattan DA's office, which I loved when I was interning. I'm a native New Yorker. But you got the best of both worlds to me as a young prosecutor, federal as well as street crime. The judge is also an election denier. She's a big proponent of Stop the Steal. One of the reasons why Fox had to pay $787 million to settle a defamation suit for claiming that the Dominion voting machines were rigged. And she's a fully rewarded Trump loyalist. Trump pardoned her husband for tax evasion and conspiracy. We'll have to see in the coming days what else the sunlight shows about her qualifications and records. But most likely, Trump's going to try to avoid his problems with the Interim and the Vacancies Act by trying to get her confirmed. And my guess is she'll stand a much better chance than Ed Martin did. But we shall see what the sunlight brings. So that's it for now. Thanks again for watching. Thanks for all the comments and replies. Look forward to talking to you there as well as on Blue Sky. Talk to you soon.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.